Our final speaker for today's ceremony is Dr. Daniel Brown. Dr. Brown is a local historian, writer, and former Francis Howell School District Superintendent. He contributed to compiling the history of the former towns and for the Old Interpretive Center and provided many of the historic images we have left of those towns. You'll see some of that today as you get to go through the center. He taught classes at Lindenwood University after he retired from Francis Howell and would bring his classes here out to the Weldon Spring site for tours. Today he joins us to celebrate the site's past contributions to this region, and we also celebrate the site's future contributions to the community. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Daniel Brown.
Thank you very much. Obviously, I can't stand here and tell you the story that this wonderful facility tells you, but I can talk just a little bit about what was here on that day in October of 1940 when the homeowners and landowners learned that this geographic site was going to be used for a TNT development plant. What was here at the time? There were, within the boundaries of the area, there were some 700 people living and prospering, and having just come out of the Depression, they were looking forward to much better times in America. On October the 24th of 1940, they received a letter saying to them essentially, you're going to have to get out. The federal government needs your land for the defense of the United States of America. And you will be contacted by a gentleman who is the land optioner for the federal government, and he will talk to you about your land and your obligations, etc., and determine a price for that property. But remember that we are going to need your property, and if necessary, eminent domain will be applied. Now, I ask you just briefly to think about that situation. 700 people, from newborns to great-grandparents, living in an area where there were many multi-generational families living together, and where if you were to be able to look behind me all the way to the Missouri River, you would have been able to see Daniel Boone crossing the river and bringing Americans to this land in 1800. The area had a long history. There were 3 small towns, Hamburg, Howell, and a little intersection called Tunerville that had a service station, a dance hall, a grocery store, and 2 of the first motel rooms in St. Charles County. Obviously, you know what happened. Eventually, they were required to leave, and they did so. And I can tell you, I can assure you, from having met with not only some of the children who were living there and who were living observers of what occurred, their initial response to this was, and I quote a number of people, if the federal government needs my land for the national defense, then I'll go. I hate it, but I'll go. We'll go. And they gave up not only their land, but their extended families. They gave up their churches, their schools, their everything that you can imagine, their circle of friends. They did that, and they did it willingly. I had the pleasure of becoming part of an organization called the TNT Group, which was formed about 50 years ago of original residents of that region and their children. By now, it's their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, but they still meet and share photographs and history of the region prior to and during the occupation of this land as the TNT plant. From my own experience with the Office of Legacy Management, et cetera, I came here in 1971 as a first-year teacher at that high school just next door. I taught here for several years. I left to go to another school, and I came back as the principal of that high school in 1984. The day I walked into my office the first time, my secretary said, "Here, this is yours." And she handed me a Geiger counter. And then she handed me a contract that I had to review and sign for a company that would continually monitor the air, water, and soil of the high school campus. And I knew right then that I had stepped into something new. About a month later, the Secret Service arrived. They were with us for 2 days, wandering the campus. And the third day, the Vice President of the United States, the sitting Vice President, Walter Mondale, borrowed our gymnasium to give a nationally televised speech on the environment and on the Superfund and the cleanup process that was going to happen. It was my experience to sit there at that facility with 2,000 students and a faculty of about 100 and watch the trucks and watch the cleanup process over the next years. Watch the number of organizations and individuals who were concerned about the cleanup. They would come to the campus, and the campus was used a number of times for large meetings of people who were concerned about cancer, blah, 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 et cetera. My response to them was always, if you stood at the entranceway to this facility, you see very knowledgeable professional people arrive every day, work on the site, go home to their children and their wives or husbands, and live their lives. And to me, that was a testament that the site was safe and that people could bring their children to my high school and that there were no hidden repercussions that they could anticipate. Later on, I had the pleasure, genuine pleasure, of becoming a member of that TNT group and meeting with many of the original residents of this area and their children and their grandchildren, and seeing their photographs and listening to their stories. And they always began their meeting by raising the flag and saying the Pledge of Allegiance and reassuring everyone that they cared deeply about their country. They cared deeply about the national defense, which is what we're still talking about, and that they gave up their land and their property willingly for national defense. It's quite an interesting experience to then become a member of the committee that formed the first Interpretive Center and watch people from the Department of Legacy Management genuinely care about the history of what was here before and how that here before time should be reflected and shared with generations and generations of visiting Americans. I love the sound effects in the background. Someone watching this will say, what are they doing to people? So, I would just conclude by saying that I look forward to visiting this facility many times. And I look forward to classrooms of children coming back and enjoying not only the scientific information that they're going to learn, but the facility as well. I encourage you to go to the top of the cell and stand there and look at the plaques that describe to you what existed in all the 4 directions at the time. where Howell was, where Hamburg was, Weldon Spring, and reflect on not only the World War II years and those families who suffered the loss of their property, but the mission of those workers who came here then and created, let me just say this to you. I too had prepared remarks, but I changed my mind. So here's just a last statement, talking about the TNT plant. The plant would eventually employ over 5,000 people and operated 3 shifts daily. It would for a time be the world's largest manufactory of TNT and DNT, explosive powders used in artillery shells, bullets, depth charge, torpedoes, and other weapons of war. It would provide a significant portion of the 3 million tons of weapons-grade TNT and DNT used in World War II. The war would have been won, I suppose, anyway, but this region, its people and its workers contributed an enormous amount to the success of the waging of that war on the part of America and its allies. This facility tells the whole story. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I will. Thank you.